Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to another Snapshots and Stories. I'm your host, Paul Owen. So this week we're going to talk about photographs that maybe we have a little trouble with. We took the photo and they never really came out the way that we had hoped they would come out. So it's one of those situations where can editing really save a photo that otherwise you might just toss in the garbage? I'm going to take a look at a specific photo that I shot. It's actually a long exposure photograph where I used a neutral density filter. And everything went kind of south in terms of its color. And just overall, it just wasn't a great image the way that I had hoped that it would turn out. Now, I had shot this in a relatively sunny day, so I had the filter cranked to the max, and I took a relatively long exposure, and it turned out with an image that just seems like a big blue black blob. And I want to see if I can resurrect this photograph. So we're going to play a little bit with Photoshop and Adobe Camera Raw and see if we can't bring this photo back to life. Now, the whole point behind doing this is to show you that you may have some photos that you took that you say, oh man, these photos are garbage. They're just, and you just toss them or get rid of them. And you'd be very surprised, I think, to find out with just a little bit of editing skills what you can actually pull out of a photograph. So today we're going to see what I can pull out of this photograph. So I'm just going to show you the photograph now. Okay, so there it is. So we have a photograph of the ocean. This is down in Cape Breton. I can't remember what part, to be honest, but anyway, the water is coming in. And I decided I wanted to see in the middle of the day, could I freeze that water or at least give it that real dreamy, almost cloudy, misty kind of a look over some wet rocks and a nice background of a little forest and some rock and a beautiful skyline over the ocean. And so I was able to get the photo pretty much, I thought, but it didn't turn out near like I thought it was going to. First of all, it's really, really blue. Second of all, it's very dark. So let's see if there's something I can do with this photo to get this back so that it was worthy of standing there and going through what I had to go through, and actually what I had to go through to even get to this position to take this shot. So just give me 1 second here. I'm going to open this up in Adobe Camera Raw. A sec here. There we go. So we're just going to hit File and Open in Camera Raw. It's going to open up in Adobe Camera Raw in just a moment here. And there we are. So here we are in Adobe Camera Raw. So what I've learned to do is sometimes rely on some of the automated circuitry or the automated programs that are built in to the software. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit an auto, and I just want to see what auto looks at this photograph and what it will actually give us. So let's push that and see what happens. So if you look at what I'm hovering over here, by the way, it says use the power of AI to analyze your photo and choose settings that create a beautiful, pleasing image. So let's see what AI says about this photo. Okay, well, it didn't do a whole lot to it, did it? Basically, it just gave me a brighter blue image, and in fact, it darkened down all those spots in between the rocks. And you can tell that they're kind of blown out by that blue color that you see sticking out between a lot of those rocks. And also another hint up there for those who are getting used to some software, especially Adobe Camera Raw. Up on top of the histogram, they have these two arrows, one on the left side, one on the right side. And the one on the left side is for the black information or the dark information. If that's lit up in white, then you know you have some underexposure. And so when I see that, I'm looking down and I can see automatically that all of those blue spots are now underexposed. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is take the blacks that are in my light tool set, and I'm just going to increase them. So automatically it's starting to look a little bit better because I've increased the blacks. So what it's done is taken me out of the underexposure. It's given me a pretty decent exposure. And at the same time, it's actually taken me a little bit out of that blue kind of a look off the rocks. Okay, so far, that's not bad. So let's see what else we can do. Because it's so blue, the first thing I want to do is I want to change the temperature by going down to my color control panel. And I'm going to grab my temperature slider. And I'm going to move it away from the blue and move it more towards a warmer kind of color. And as I do that, okay, I'm starting to see a little bit better color balance based on just making that adjustment. Now, I also have my tint adjustment, which will allow me to get something a little bit more in the reds, or I can go more in the greens. So right now, that's not really doing a whole lot of difference for me. So I'm just going to leave that one alone just for a moment. All right, so I'm going to go back up to exposure, and I still think I can push this a little bit more. So let's do that. Okay, now look what's happening. By bringing up the exposure, I've now gotten out of that really dark blue kind of look that we had to begin with, and it's now starting to look a little bit more normal. Okay, so based on what I'm looking at here, I think that tells us that we were underexposed because of the blue color cast, which is generally what happens a lot of the times when you don't have enough exposure. All right, so I'm going to cut the blacks back now a little bit just to give it a little more depth, but not too much. Again, keeping an eye on my underexposure values that are going to pop up between those rocks. Even if a couple of them are there, it won't matter that much. Okay, so now I've got that done. It looks like I've got the colors somewhat set to be a pretty good balance. So having done that, now I'm analyzing this photograph and I'm thinking, okay, what can we do next? Well, let's look at the sky first of all. So the sky is kind of washed out. And so what I want to do is I want to bring that sky back to a point where it's not so bright and maybe a little more dynamic. So what we can do here first is with Adobe Camera Raw, I'm just going to cut just a little bit, not much, because we'll turn blue real quick if I'm not careful. So I'm going to go ahead and in Adobe Camera Raw, if you go down the fourth from the top set of tools, you'll come to the masks area, which is this little round circle. So what you do is you click on the mask, and then you'll have your mask tools will become open. So there's one actually called Sky. So I'm going to click on it. And what should happen is just whatever is sky should be covered with a red mask, which it is. So that looks pretty darn good to me. So now what we're going to do here is just based on that, I'm just going to bring the exposure down a little bit in the sky. Not too much. Then I'm going to add a little contrast to it, just to make that sky look like it's a little bit more alive back there. I can even add more whites if I want to, but again, if I'm not careful, you can see that red smearing in. Well, that red is my histogram telling me that I'm starting to overexpose in that white area. So I have to be very careful. So let's try moving the blacks back a little bit on this. And again, now you can see that sky starting to look like it's come to life. Like it's pretty nice. So I think I'm okay with that sky. I think that looks quite nice now. We can now go on to another part of the image. So let's go to create a new mask. There's one called Landscape. What Landscape does, it allows us to choose various parts of our image. And I think I've showed some of you this before, but this one's really quite nice how this works. So I could choose sky. I could choose mountains, which is obviously the stuff in the background. I can choose water, or I can choose natural ground. When I choose natural ground, it also chooses the mountain area in the back. So we can work on those separately, even though the masks shows us that we're only working on the grass, or the foreground, sorry. So let's click on natural ground. Let's work on those stones. And then we're going to create. And now what we're going to do is we're going to eliminate the ones that are selected up here by just simply hitting subtract. I can choose by selecting object, and I should be able to just select that whole object. Oops, hang on now. Just like that, and that should pretty much take that. There you go. And the same as these two little guys right here. Let's go ahead and select those. And what we're doing is we're subtracting the mask off of those so that we're only working on the foreground here, which in this case, is the natural ground. So now that we've got that done, we can go ahead and do a lot of different things. So just by working on the natural ground itself, we can play around a little bit with the exposure. So if I want to make it a little more contrasty, I can certainly do that. Overall, I think the the ground looks relatively well. The rocks look fantastic. I think what they're lacking more than anything is just a little color. So let's go ahead and just give them a little bit of saturation. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Look at those rocks just come to life. Now you got to be careful with this kind of thing because you can oversaturate really quickly. So now look at those rocks. They look absolutely fantastic. We got nice water glisten on them. Got lots of detail in terms of, well, I guess grain and whatnot in the rocks. And the image was taken at f11. So because it was shot at f11, I got a nice deep field of view. So everything from that very first rock right on out to the far portions of that outer, we'll call it a mountain for the time being, are in focus. So it's important to do that when you're doing landscape. Try to get a nice deep depth of field. You can see I shot that at 13 seconds. That's how long this exposure was. So no wonder it was so dark, eh? At ISO 50. So it was a challenge to shoot, to say the least. So okay, so now we got the rocks looking relatively nice. Let's now go back to the natural ground again. So we're going to choose select landscape, and this time we're going to go to the mountain area. And we go create. And now I'm going to do the same sort of thing. I'm going to subtract just this mountain peak right here, or this rock peak, let's call it, because I don't want to do that one at the same time I'm doing that other foreground. Okay, so there we have it. So that's pretty much ready to go. So now we're just going to work on this part of the structure, or of the image rather. So let's go ahead, let's scooch down to our tools. And again, these, I'm just doing some very basic things. So I can look at exposure, and I can cut the exposure back a little bit on it. With this one, I'm probably going to play around a little bit with tint and temperature and see if I can get that looking a little bit better. I may have to actually go in and mask a certain part of that to do what I want to do with it. So right now I'm just going to put some contrast in it. Just make it look a little darker. I might shadow it up just a little bit just to give it some vibrance. I might drop the blacks just a little bit to give it some contrast. And then from there, I think this one as well could use just a tad of color. Not much, just a tad. There we go. All right, so we got the mountainous area we dealt with. We dealt with the sky. We dealt with some of the rocks. Now let's go ahead and deal with the actual water itself, because this, to me, is the whole point of this image, was to see what we could do with this water by slowing down or almost freezing that motion. So let's go ahead and create a new mask. Select landscape, and this time we're going to select the water. And the only thing we're going to adjust is the water. So let's go ahead and hit create. And now with the water, I'm just going to play around a little bit with the exposure. I'm going to bring it up because it's really going to whiten up, which is what I was after to begin with. But at the same time, you got to keep an eye on the highlights because you can lose some of that detail that we want. So if I take those highlights and cut them back, as you can see, let me just push them up all the way. You can start to see that I'm starting to blow out. It's just kind of big white smear. We don't want that. So let's cut back on the highlights. And now we've got some texture going on within the water itself. It's starting to look good. Now with the blacks, I'm just going to bring them back just ever so slightly because what that's going to do, that's really going to help us concentrate on that darker part of that deep blue water, which 9 times out of 10 is a deeper blue color than what the sky is at the time. And then I'm going to add, I'm going to switch down. We've got this other area of our tool set called Effects, which has texture and clarity in it. So again, I'm only working on the water, but I want to try to get some more definition in that white area. So by adjusting the clarity slider, it's going to give me a little more dynamic. And you got to be very ginger with these sliders because they can get out of control really quick. And I'm going to add a little more texture. As much as I want it that smooth, I still do, but I want to be able to see just a little bit more of that in there. And I'm starting to see that mist. See how the mist is starting to become more evident over and around the rocks? That's kind of what I'm going after. Now, I may, based on what I've seen there, I may want to lighten that up a bit. So I might pop up the shadows just ever so slightly. There we go. All right, that's looking pretty darn good. Okay, so now what we're going to do here is we're going to become a little bit more selective. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the rock garden again. I'll call it the rock garden for now. So we're going to go ahead and hit landscape, and we're going to go to natural ground, and I'm going to create. And I'm going, of course, to subtract again the object, which is these two rocks and that mountain area. So if I do it all at once, it should take care of it. Oh, just missed this little guy. And there we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to my color area. And you give me a second till I find it here. Okay. And there's a little tool here called point color. So if you open that up, this will allow us to actually choose specific colors and work away at them. So if I click on sample point color, now what I want to do is I want to increase the color in these reddish kind of rocks. So I'm going to click on that. And as I click on it, it's chose that color. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some saturation. And as you can see, the blue rocks are not being affected by this, and I don't want them to be. I just want more of that saturation on those redder rocks, just so that we're starting to get a little bit more color variation in that rock garden. Now we can also adjust the luminance on them, so we can either make them darker or brighter. And we can also adjust the hue, so we can make them even a little more red if we want. But again, we're trying to keep this as natural as possible. So that looks pretty darn good. We can also select another point color. This time I'm going to select that greenish one. And I'm going to do the same thing. I want to increase the saturation just in those rocks that have some moss or some green in them, just to make those colors pop a bit. And there's not a lot in there. And again, we can change the hue on that one. So that's looking a little better. I think that's probably all the color we're going to need, other than we want to go back up and add just a little bit overall color to this. So we can go back up to our color adjustments right here and go ahead and grab the saturation. And we're going to push the saturation a little bit more now. There we go. Now that seems a little blue heavy to me still. So let's go ahead with our temperature and let's back off on those blues and make that rock. There we go. That looks a lot more natural. So now we've got an absolutely wonderful foreground in the garden, in the rock garden we'll call it. Our water looks wonderful, misty, very mysterious. Looks very good. So the only thing I want to do now is I want to go up into our mountain range, and I want to choose those trees, and I want to get some green up in there. So I'm going to go up and select yet another mask. This time I'm going to select a landscape again. I'm going to select mountains and create. Now what I'm going to do in the mountains, I'm actually going to intersect that, because there's a certain part of that I don't want to work with. So if I intersect that mask with a linear gradient. Now I can just pull down from the top of the tree line down to basically the bottom of the tree line. And that is the only thing that this mask is actually going to work on. And that's all I want to work on, because I want to work on those trees. I want to see if I can get those trees a little greener. So let's go ahead and try adjusting some tint up there. And there we go. And they're starting to look green. If I force them over a little more on the yellow side, now we've got that nice sort of green tint going on up there. I could saturate it a little more. You got to be careful. And again, just simply adjust that so it looks natural and not too overly done, but yet it still looks like it's happening. It's a significant part of this scene. All right, so now that we've got that done, I'm just going to do one final adjustment. And this time I'm going to go ahead and adjust those rocks. I want to make the rocks just a little more apparent. So I'm going to try and see if I can just simply select it by choosing it as an object. And let's see if we can just select that as an object and see what it grabs. Perfect. So I just got a little more rock to cover over here. And a little more here. Sometimes it takes a few goes around, because the mask, when it looks at something like this, is a little confused based on the rock surface and whatnot. So I think it looks pretty good. I think we got it selected quite well. So now we can go ahead and probably add a little contrast to it. Oh yeah, there we go. And give it some sense of how the water crawls up the rock as the tide comes in and raises and lowers. So we start to see a sense of that just by adding a little contrast to it. Now I might add just a little pop of color in there, just to give us a different idea of some of the material rocks that are in there and the variety of the different rock types that are in that mountainous area. So based on that, that looks pretty darn good to me. The only thing I'm seeing now that I'm questioning is whether or not my horizon is straight. So how are we going to check that? We're going to go over to our crop tool here. And then we can just simply go down to the automatic balance perspective and corrections. And it will actually make some corrections based on what our lens shortcomings are in terms of distortions and whatnot. And at the same time, it should actually straighten out our horizon. So let's just give that old A a push and see what it does. And sure enough, there it goes. It corrected everything that was incorrect in terms of the spherical aberrations from the lens. And it also straightened out the horizon. So I would say, based on that, let's just take a look. I'm just going to turn off that grid. And I think we have ourselves an absolutely amazing looking photograph, 13 seconds long at ISO 50, using a 24 to 70 millimeter lens at 24 millimeters. And because it was 24 millimeters, we did run into a little bit of spherical aberration, which you tend to get with those wide angle lenses if you're not really careful with them. So the software has those corrective tools built in, and it knows whether or not that there are some corrections it can make to straighten up your photo, take out the aberrations, and really give you a much more flatter field, as opposed to seeing some of the curvature that you can see in the lens. So now that we've got that done, I'm going to zoom in on it now, and I want to have a look at noise. At 50 millimeters, or at ISO 50, there shouldn't be much noise, but I do see some noise there. So what I'm going to do to finalize this image is I'm going to go ahead and slide down into Adobe Camera Raw, and you go to the area that's called Detail. And Detail has, Detail encompasses the denoise algorithm that's built into this, and it is an absolutely wonderful tool. It really cleans up the images. If there's any kind of color noise going on, it'll clean that up. And it doesn't leave any artifacts whatsoever, and just does a wonderful job. So let's go ahead and push that button, denoise. It should only take a few seconds. You might hear my computer chirping through because it's a very CPU intensive tool. So you might hear my computer just squawk a little bit, but we'll see. It seems to be running quite nicely now. And it's just chirping right along there. There it goes. We're at, oh, she's a little chuggy there. There we go. Beautiful. So now we have an image that's now been cleaned up, slightly sharpened, and let's zoom in again now. Absolutely beautifully clear, clean sky. There. And let's zoom back out. Whoops. There we go. And so we have a nice, beautifully denoised, crispy clear image. So there's really not a lot more that, that I would have to do to that image. If you can take a look at it now, and you might say to yourself, well, you know what? Maybe you could use a little more blue or maybe whatever. So you can do some final tweaks on it if you want to. Just slightly touch it in blue, only to make that sky, the water and the sky just slightly bluer. Other than that, I think we have an absolutely great image. So, so there you have it. So there was an image that possibly we just wanted to throw away because it was just absolutely dark. It was absolutely blue, and it just didn't look great. But with a little bit of editing, and it really wasn't much, a little bit of editing, 15, 20 minutes, 25 minutes on an image, that you spend a lot of time to get to a location like this, a fair bit of time to walk out to get to the spot that you want it to be on. It would be an awful shame to go through all of that and just to have an image that you're going to toss, when you know that if you got just a little bit of editing skill or knowledge, that you can go in and take what could be a bad image and save it and maybe even make it print-worthy. It could be a nice print-worthy image. So that's basically what we've looked at there. Now let me just come back to me. Okay, we're back, and so there it was, folks. Go through your images, see what you got, especially for one of those ones where maybe you took a camera on a trip to places that maybe you're not going to be again, maybe ever, or at least for a year or 2 or 3. So, go through all those photos. Don't toss them away. Just knowing that, just from what I showed you here, there's a lot that you can do to recover a photo. The software that we have today is amazing. The cameras that we shoot it with are amazing. So even though we might have not done the job that we had hoped to do straight into the camera, there's always that capability to go ahead and straighten it out with some software, with just a little bit of work and just to spend a little bit of time learning some of this software. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope you learned something from it. And like I say, keep out there, keep shooting. Every time you shoot something, take those bad photographs, put them on your computer, and look at them and discover, what did I do wrong? Okay, and how did whatever's gone wrong, what was it that I did that made that happen? So the next time I go out and shoot, I'm going to correct that and get it better in camera. It's because every time you shoot a photograph, and it's the worst ones that you will learn from. The best photographs, you're just happy and you're just glad you got them, but it's the ones that aren't so good that you learn a lot from. First of all, what do I need to do to correct it in camera? And then if I can't correct it in camera, what do I need to do to edit it in software to be able to get the image that we started to go out for and go after. So again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something from this, and we're going to keep this content up in terms of some tutorials. There's a lot of people who are afraid of editing, and I was one of those people, and I'm going to just share with you a lot of these things as I get some photographs in, and hopefully it'll take a little of that fear out of the editing process for you. So for now, we will talk to you soon and see you on the next video.